Welcome back to Biz Talk, everyone. I am your host, Rachel Weaver, and I'm thrilled to have with me today a very special guest, Lalit Ahluwali. He is the CEO of DigitalXForce and I Trust X-Force. He is a visionary force and cyber security thought leader. He is the CEO and founder of DigitalXForce, I Trust X-Force, where he leads change and revolutionizing the industry with innovative T-Trust solutions. His leadership leverages automation, trust solutions in the workplace. It is such an honor and pleasure to have you with us today.
And thank you, Rachel. Glad to be back on the show again.
I am excited to dive right in because I find your career so extremely fascinating, to be honest with you. It is something that I'm super excited to learn more about from you, because I think there's a lot of business owners that tune in and watch this, and what you add is extremely valuable, and a lot of people aren't even aware of how important cybersecurity is and what something like you and your company can do for them. So I would love to add in a little bit more about your career and illustrating you and some of the things that you have done. What can you share with us about your vision behind developing your company?
Absolutely, Rachel. So I think, first of all, number one, I wanted to be back here. And this is a forum I feel is an important to spread the message, because as you rightly said, cybersecurity has become something that impacts in our day-to-day life. And why? Because each and every one of us, just like you sitting right now, you're communicating with us over the web, through the camera. You don't need to be in the studio either. And imagine every facet of life today is getting digitized in the same fashion. Soon, Rachel might be traveling, as you described earlier, Pittsburgh to LA. You might be driving a self-driving car. What is that? It's a digital, equipment, again, in your hand, which allows you to work while you're still driving. That's how the things are transforming nowadays. Maybe soon, like Rachel, will go from Pittsburgh to Mars in a space tourism. What is that? Another digital asset. So each and everything, as more digitization is becoming, requires security as well. And hence why it's important now, not just for the businesses, but even individuals to be ready with a good cyber hygiene. And hence why what we're doing at the DigitalXForce and I Trust X-Force. So it's not just about securing businesses. Our motto is to secure the future together. And anything and everything we're really doing is to make a broader impact and run a business with purpose.
Love that. So profound. Thank you for sharing that with us. I knew I threw that out there, but I felt as though it was really important for us to bring that to the table. So I have a couple questions. How can I elevate the cybersecurity practices of my third-party vendors?
Absolutely. Rachel, think about how interconnected we are now as businesses. There's not a single business that is just run wholly, because you are dependent on so many suppliers and service providers. Just a simple example, for you, Apple might be just a phone or a company, but that company relies on so many third parties to provide different parts of the equipment, or even the data services that really consumes and provides to the customers. Which means you're not only relying on the security of your own organization to secure what is in your custody, but you also really have to make sure the third parties or the suppliers are equally, managing the data or the security in the same fashion. Now, 2 years back, you might remember the Colonial Pipeline hack that happened. That was kind of really disruption of the supply chain. In Texas alone, like almost 3 or 4 years back, we had a big series of ransomware attacks that really brought the different departments to a standstill. A lot of these attacks originated not by directly hijacking the core organization, but actually hijacking the third parties and the suppliers because became the easy point of entrance. And hence why this is very critical. That's not just about you securing your prime organization, but if you're letting anyone else, like a third party, is your responsibility as well to make sure you have the similar acumen around protecting the assets that are in your custody or which you have given them the authority to manage on your behalf.
Wow, very interesting. So, what steps would you say I should take to secure my supply chain against cyber threats?
Well, it starts with the basics first. I always tell people, like, like in a football game, you can have all the strategies, but it starts with block and tackle. If you can't do that, doesn't matter how many players you have. You never going to win a football game. The same way, with third-party risk management, it's very important to understand what are you really leveraging the third party for. Really getting like into the basic questionnaire and the assessments in place. Just like how you want to make sure like that only people who need to have access to the data or to the services, the same way you need to have third parties and the supply chain vendors very well define what level of access would they get and how can they get it. Make sure that when they are coming and accessing your system, you're monitoring them for what they're accessing. There's a continuous provision and monitoring of those things happen. The another big threat actor that really hijacks many organizations is when you give open access to these third parties. You want to have not only managing access, but also making in a way that it's monitored and reviewed on a regular basis. Last but not least, if something bad happens, you need to recover from your end. Means back up your systems, back up your data, have some kind of incident response plan when, like, for example, third party gets hijacked. You don't want to just rely on them. You want to have a good way of recovering yourself. Last but not least, perform the third party risk assessments on a regular basis. You don't want to really let that go unnoticed and unmonitored and not assessed. So those are the simple techniques or methods you can employ to really make sure your supply chain is protected.
Wow, so important to be able to understand that and take measures because you hear of these cyber attacks happening so often. So this is really critical information because in today's world, we're all online and we're all on our phone and we're all, working from laptops, which are so vulnerable. So that is really great information. How can I ensure the security of products or services that I source from external providers?
Well, we used to call it, or you still call it, test. That's the first thing. Anything that you're trying to procure and make sure this is tested for any security vulnerabilities. When I say vulnerabilities, it sounds like a technical word, but any flaws that can really come in and open the channels to you. So make sure there's a thorough testing done when you really acquire new service and a very thorough assessment done on the service provider before you really bring them on board. And when you do that, then just do not really assume that everything is fit and fine. You still got to do your part. As I said, you should be really regularly monitoring them. You make sure their access you're given to them is also constantly not only reviewed, but they're only given the level of access they should be getting. Now, people probably don't realize, but there's so many valuable resources available out there from the national governing bodies, which are require or are putting all this good, helpful material for a lot of small, medium businesses, as well as the organizations to make sure they remain safe and secure. But understand, supply chain is one area most people take it very lightly. They assume, and this is a very false assumption or wrong assumption that people usually make, or because I've outsourced, this is their responsibility. No, it's still a joint responsibility. You're equally responsible as is a third party, and you also have a bigger role to play, an equally important role to play as your third party to secure the assets and the data.
Right. Wow. Such important information, because a lot of times it's funny, it all goes back to accountability, right? We are responsible for anything we bring into our business, any person we bring into our business. And sure, if you're going to source products or services from outside vendors, or maybe purchase something to save a little bit of money, a laptop or certain things, we have to make sure that it's secure before bringing that into our workspace and downloading anything, especially if we have any kind of confidential information. It's just such a huge risk. So many.
Rachel, yeah, Rachel, if I might add something more, which is to really make it very applicable and people to connect the dots, right? I don't know if you remember the movie Troy.
Yes.
Where towards the end, what was the technique they deployed? They basically put as a gift, as a horse, and that was brought into the behind the walls, right? Which was like totally secure, but nobody really tested what was inside it. They just assumed and like brought inside, and that became your vulnerability. Now imagine what that is.
Right.
That is exactly an example of a third party. You let that come in your premises thinking that was secure when you should have tested, properly assessed it before you let it go, or not even allowed to if you never needed a service, right? The same philosophy and the concept applies in the digital world. You've got to really assess the things from your, all the different angles. And then only you should let them like get the access. And when you do, you still monitor and like, fundamentally allow them to like really, do what they have to do, but securely. So
such a great, important information for everyone to understand and implement right away. So thank you so much for all of your insight. Can you tell the audience, where can we find you?
Absolutely. So we like to really kind of, create more awareness so people can find us on LinkedIn, as well as we have two of our websites, DigitalXForce.com and itrustxforce.com. We like to again, as much as possible, spread the message and awareness. And there are other valuable sources such as this media channel, and there are other like TV shows we're doing to create this level of education for anyone and everyone. So feel free to reach out to us. And of course, if we can help, we'll definitely make sure you get some help from somewhere.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It was a true honor and pleasure. And with that, we will be right back after this commercial break.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much.